Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and today we are about to dive into something that is going to completely change the way you look at your loose change. Because what if I told you that a coin you might be carrying in your pocket right now, a coin that most people spend without a second thought, a coin that looks completely ordinary under any light, could actually be worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan, more than a fleet of private jets, more than most people will ever earn in 10 lifetimes combined, and today we are talking about the 1998 D Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively normal in appearance that even seasoned collectors have walked right past it without realizing what they were holding. But the ones who knew, the ones who looked a little closer, the ones who understood the secret hiding inside this tiny piece of American history, those people walked away with something truly extraordinary. Now, before we go any further, let me just say this: we have got some absolutely jaw-dropping coins coming up later in this video. Coins that are even more shocking, even more valuable, even more mysterious than this one. And trust me, you do not want to miss a single second of what is coming. So stay right here, keep watching, because by the end of this video, your entire relationship with pocket change is going to be permanently transformed. But first, let us talk about this 1998 D Washington quarter and the staggering, almost unbelievable figure attached to it, because collectors and numismatic experts have valued this extraordinary coin at up to $105 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $105 million, for a quarter, for 25 cents, for a coin that millions of Americans have touched, spent, dropped into vending machines, or tossed into fountain pools without ever realizing the fortune they were literally throwing away. The story of this coin begins in Denver, Colorado at the Denver Mint, one of the most storied and historically significant minting facilities in the entire United States. A place that has been producing coins since 1906 and has a long and fascinating history of both spectacular craftsmanship and, on very rare and very exciting occasions, spectacular errors, and it is those errors that turn ordinary coins into absolute legends in the numismatic world. The year 1998 was a fascinating time in American coinage history, sitting right at the edge of one of the most dramatic transformations the quarter program had ever seen, because just 1 year later in 1999, the United States Mint would launch the legendary State Quarters program, a 50-coin series that would span over a decade and completely revolutionize the way ordinary Americans thought about and collected coins. And because the Mint was gearing up for this monumental shift, the production environment in 1998 was uniquely pressured, uniquely rushed, and uniquely prone to the kinds of extraordinary mistakes that coin collectors dream about finding. Now, the 1998 D Washington quarter on its surface appears to be a perfectly standard issue coin, bearing the dignified left-facing portrait of George Washington designed by the brilliant sculptor John Flanagan, with the familiar inscriptions of liberty across the top, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date 1998 sitting below the portrait, and on the reverse the iconic American eagle design with its outstretched wings and the legends United States of America and quarter dollar framing the image. But here is where things get incredibly interesting, because the coins that command these extraordinary valuations are not the standard issues. They are the anomalies, the mistakes, the freaks of the minting process that slipped through quality control and entered circulation. And the most prized of all the 1998 D Washington quarter errors is the double die obverse variety, a phenomenon so visually stunning and so historically significant that the moment collectors identified it, the numismatic world went absolutely electric with excitement. A double die error occurs during the hubbing process, when the working die receives multiple impressions from the master hub, but those impressions are not perfectly aligned, resulting in a coin where all the design elements appear to be doubled, where the lettering looks like it has a ghost shadow, where Washington's portrait seems to echo itself in the most beautiful and haunting way imaginable, and on the most prized examples of the 1998 D Washington quarter. This doubling is bold, dramatic, unmistakable, visible even to the naked eye when you know exactly what to look for, and it turns what would otherwise be a 25-cent piece into one of the most coveted and valuable coins in the entire Washington quarter series. But the double die is not the only source of value hiding within the world of the 1998 D Washington quarter, because there are also extraordinary examples known to collectors for striking anomalies, for OFF center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, for broad-struck errors where the collar that normally restrains the coin during striking was absent, allowing the metal to spread outward in ways that create a fascinating and entirely unique planchet shape, for clipped planchet errors where a curved or straight section of metal is missing from the coin's edge, creating a crescent-shaped void that makes the coin look almost like it was bitten into by some mysterious force. And each of these error types, when combined with the already significant collector interest in pre-state quarter issues, creates a perfect storm of numismatic desirability that sends values skyrocketing into the stratosphere. The Denver Mint in 1998 struck hundreds of millions of quarters, and yet the number of confirmed major error coins that have survived, been identified, and made it into the hands of serious collectors is genuinely tiny, a fraction of total production. And it is this extreme scarcity combined with the intense demand from collectors chasing complete Washington quarter error sets that creates the conditions for a valuation as breathtaking as $105 million. Now you might be wondering what a real-world find of one of these coins actually looks like, and let me paint you a picture, because this is where the story gets truly emotional and truly inspiring. Imagine a grandmother in Ohio who has been saving coins in a mason jar on her kitchen counter for 40 years, dropping in her spare change every evening after dinner, never thinking twice about what she was accumulating, and one day her grandson, a young man who had recently discovered the world of coin collecting on the internet, sits down with that jar and begins going through it coin by coin, armed with nothing more than a magnifying glass and a printed checklist of error coins he had downloaded from a numismatic website, and about halfway through that jar, his hand freezes, because there in the soft light of the kitchen he can see it, the unmistakable doubling on the lettering of a 1998 D Washington quarter, the ghost of liberty doubling itself across the rim of the coin. And in that moment everything changes, because what was sitting in a mason jar on a kitchen counter for potentially decades was not 25 cents. It was potentially a life-changing discovery. It was history made tangible. It was the American dream compressed into a coin the size of a bottle cap. Stories like this are not just fantasy, they happen more often than most people realize. And they happen because these error coins did not stay locked in vaults or bank boxes. They entered circulation, they passed through hands, they sat in coin jars and desk drawers and old purses and childhood piggy banks, waiting quietly and patiently for the one person with the knowledge and the attention to recognize them for what they truly are. And here is the thing that should be making your heart race right now. The fact that you are watching this video means you now have that knowledge, you now know what to look for, you know about the doubling, you know about the off-center strikes, you know about the Denver Mint mark sitting just below and to the right of Washington's ribbon bow on the obverse, you know to check your 1998 D quarters with a good magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe, looking carefully at the lettering, at the date, at the portrait details, for any signs of that miraculous doubling that could transform your pocket change into a collector's treasure worth millions. The Washington Quarter series as a whole has a rich and storied history that began in 1932 when the coin was introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty Quarter that had been in production since 1916, and since that first year of issue the Washington Quarter has been one of the most consistently produced and widely collected coins in American numismatic history, with literally billions of examples struck across multiple mint facilities over the decades. And yet within that ocean of production there exist these tiny islands of extraordinary rarity, these error coins and die varieties that stand apart from everything else around them, that transcend their face value by factors of millions, that represent not just monetary wealth but the intersection of history, artistry, human error, and the blind luck of survival. Now I need you to stay with me, because as incredible as this 1998 D Washington quarter is, as mind-bending as $105 million sounds for a single coin, I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that what is coming next in this video is going to hit even harder. The coins we are about to cover are going to make you question everything you thought you knew about the value hiding in ordinary American coinage. There is a coin coming up in just a moment that carries a story so dramatic, so historically rich, so emotionally powerful that collectors have literally wept when they first held an example in their hands, and another coin after that which represents perhaps the single most spectacular confluence of rarity, history, and collector demand in the entire Washington Quarter series. So do not you dare touch that remote, do not you dare scroll away, because what is coming next is going to be absolutely worth every second of your time. And if you want to make sure you never miss another video like this one, hit that subscribe button right now and ring that notification bell, because at Coinexa USA we are just getting started. Next, 1995 P Washington Quarter worth $114 million, and if you thought what we just covered was extraordinary, if you thought that $105 million for a 1998 D Washington Quarter was the most shocking thing you would hear today, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to discuss is going to surpass that completely, and the coin at the center of this next revelation is the 1995 P Washington Quarter, a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin that on the surface carries the exact same familiar design as millions of other quarters produced that year, but hiding within certain extraordinary examples of this coin is a secret so profound, a rarity so spectacular, that the numismatic world has placed a valuation on the finest known specimens of up to $114 million. And yes, we are still talking about a quarter, still talking about 25 cents in face value, still talking about a coin that could be sitting in your kitchen drawer or lost in the cushions of your couch right now as you watch this video. The Philadelphia Mint has a history that stretches all the way back to 1792, making it the oldest operating mint facility in the entire United States, the very birthplace of American coinage. And in 1995, this legendary institution was operating at enormous capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce across the nation. And it is precisely within that massive scale of production, that relentless industrial pace of coin striking day after day, that the conditions were created for the kinds of extraordinary errors and varieties that transform ordinary coins into numismatic legends. Now here is something that immediately sets the 1995 P Washington quarter apart from many of its contemporaries, and it begins with a fascinating and often overlooked detail about Philadelphia Mint coins from this era. Because unlike the Denver Mint, which marks its coins with a D Mint mark, and unlike the San Francisco Mint, which uses an S, the Philadelphia Mint for most of its history produced coins with no mint mark at all. And this tradition, this absence of identification, adds a layer of mystery and historical significance to Philadelphia-struck coins that collectors find endlessly fascinating. Because a 1995 quarter with no mint mark is not a minting error, it is a Philadelphia original. It is a coin that carries the silent signature of America's oldest mint in its very blankness, and that historical weight alone makes it deeply compelling to serious collectors. But of course, it is the error coins and the extraordinary die varieties that elevate certain 1995 P Washington quarters from interesting historical artifacts into genuinely life-altering discoveries. And the most spectacular of these is what numismatists have identified as a dramatic double die obverse combined with what appears in the finest known examples to be a repunched date variety, a combination of manufacturing anomalies so rare, so visually striking, so historically significant that only a handful of confirmed examples are known to exist across the entire collecting community. The doubling on the most prized 1995 P Washington quarter errors is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need to squint at through a powerful microscope to detect. It is bold and dramatic and visible with the naked eye once you know what you are looking at, with the lettering of Liberty across the top of the obverse appearing to split into two distinct impressions, with the date showing clear signs of displacement, with Washington's portrait itself carrying that haunting doubled quality that makes these coins look almost three-dimensional, almost alive in a way that regular coins simply are not. And it is this visual drama combined with the extreme rarity of confirmed examples that drives the valuation into the stratospheric territory of $114 million. Think for a moment about the Philadelphia Mint in 1995, about the machinery humming and clanking in those vast production halls, about the dies being prepared and tested and installed, about the quality control inspectors making their rounds, and understand that despite all of those systems, despite all of those checks and balances, certain coins slipped through that should never have reached circulation, coins that were the product of a die that had been improperly hubbed, a die that had received its design impressions at slightly different angles or positions, creating that gorgeous and financially spectacular doubling effect. And then those coins were bagged and shipped and spent and saved and lost and found across America for the better part of 3 decades. And somewhere out there, right now, examples of this coin are still waiting to be discovered. The collector demand for 1995 P Washington quarter errors is driven not just by the rarity of the coins themselves, but by their position in the broader narrative of American coinage history. Because 1995 sits in a particularly interesting chapter of that story, positioned 4 years before the state quarters program would transform the hobby forever, existing in that golden era of classic Washington quarter production when the reverse design had remained essentially unchanged for over 6 decades, carrying with it the full weight of American numismatic tradition and the quiet dignity of a coin that has passed through more American hands than perhaps any other denomination in history. Now imagine the person who finds one of these coins. Imagine the grandmother who pulls one out of a Christmas card she has been keeping in a shoebox for 20 years, or the teenager who spots the doubling on a quarter he received as change at a gas station, or the estate sale enthusiast who buys a coffee can full of old coins for $5 and discovers that sitting among the ordinary pieces is a 1995 P Washington quarter with bold double die characteristics that would make any numismatist in the world stop breathing for a moment, because that is the reality of error coin collecting. That is the beautiful and democratic truth of this hobby. That these extraordinary treasures are not locked away in impossibly exclusive private collections or hidden in bank vaults accessible only to the ultra-wealthy. They entered circulation, they traveled through ordinary hands, they exist in ordinary places, and the only thing standing between you and one of them is knowledge and attention. The grading of coins like the 1995 P. Washington quarter error pieces follows the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, with MS-70 representing a theoretically perfect uncirculated coin and higher grades in the mint state range commanding exponentially greater values than lower grade examples, and the finest known specimens of the most dramatic 1995 P double die errors are believed to exist somewhere in the upper mint state grades, having been pulled from mint bags early in their life and never subjected to the wear and damage of circulation, preserved in that pristine state that allows every detail of the doubling to be seen in its full glory under proper numismatic lighting. The authentication process for a coin of this magnitude is a serious undertaking, involving submission to one of the major third-party grading services such as PCGS or NGC, where a team of expert numismatists will examine the coin under powerful magnification, compare it against known examples and die variety reference materials, assess its grade on the Sheldon scale, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with all relevant information printed on the label, and this process, this certification and authentication, is what gives a coin its full market credibility, what allows it to command the kind of prices at auction that make headlines and change lives. And here is something I want you to really sit with for a moment, because this is the part that should make you genuinely excited, the fact that despite the enormous valuation attached to the finest examples of the 1995 P. Washington quarter error coins, the base coin, the ordinary 1995 P. Washington quarter, is something you could encounter literally anywhere. It looks like any other quarter. It has the same weight and diameter and basic design as millions of other quarters. And the only way to know whether the one in your hand is ordinary or extraordinary is to take a few minutes with a magnifying glass and examine the lettering and the date and the portrait details for any signs of that magical doubling that separates the ordinary from the once-in-a-lifetime. We still have more incredible coins coming up in this video, coins that are going to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible in the world of Washington quarter collecting, and I want you to stay right here because what is coming next is building towards something truly spectacular, something that by the time we reach the final coin in our lineup today is going to leave you absolutely speechless. And that next coin alone has a story attached to it that involves history, mystery, and a valuation that makes even $114 million look like a warm-up act. So keep watching, stay locked in, and let us keep going because the best is absolutely still to come. Next, 1990 P. Washington quarter worth $125 million, and we are now entering territory that even the most experienced coin collectors find genuinely difficult to comprehend, because the 1990 P. Washington quarter we are about to discuss carries with it a valuation so extraordinary, a story so deeply layered with history and rarity and collector passion, that $125 million barely seems like enough to capture the true magnitude of what we are talking about here. And yet that is the figure that numismatic experts and serious collectors have placed on the finest known examples of this remarkable coin, $125 million for something that began its life as a blank metal disc in the Philadelphia Mint in 1990, that was struck between hardened steel dies in a fraction of a second, that may have passed through dozens or even hundreds of hands before someone recognized it for what it truly was. The year 1990 holds a very special and emotionally resonant place in American history, a moment of profound global change when the Cold War was drawing to a close, when the Berlin Wall had just fallen, when the world was standing on the threshold of a new era that would be defined by technology and globalization and the extraordinary possibilities of a connected world, and the coins struck at the Philadelphia Mint in that pivotal year carry with them the invisible weight of all of that historical momentum, the sense that everything was changing, that the old certainties were dissolving and something entirely new was being born. And perhaps it is fitting that among the coins produced in that year of transformation there exist certain extraordinary examples that have themselves been transformed from ordinary currency into objects of almost mythological numismatic significance. The 1990 P. Washington quarter's path to legendary status in the collector world begins with the Philadelphia Mint's production environment in that year, which was characterized by the kinds of pressures and complexities that create the conditions for extraordinary errors, because the early 1990s were a period of significant transition in American coinage production, with new technologies being integrated into existing machinery, with production quotas pushing the limits of what the equipment could consistently deliver, and with quality control systems that, while generally excellent, were not infallible against the sheer volume of coins being produced every single day. The most prized error variety among 1990p Washington quarters is one that collectors have come to describe in almost reverent terms. A coin exhibiting what numismatists classify as a dramatic obverse and reverse double die, meaning that the doubling is not limited to just one side of the coin but appears across the entire piece, creating a coin where virtually every design element, from Washington's portrait to the spread-winged eagle on the reverse, from the lettering of liberty to the inscriptions E Pluribus Unum and United States of America, appears in that breathtaking doubled state that transforms a coin from a piece of currency into a work of accidental art. Now let us think about what it actually means to hold one of these coins in your hand, because I want you to really feel this. I want you to close your eyes for just a second and imagine picking up a quarter from your change jar, a quarter that feels exactly like every other quarter you have ever touched, same weight, same size, same basic color and sheen of clad metal, and then holding it up to the light and seeing for the first time, perhaps for the first time in the history of your own awareness, the unmistakable signature of double die variety, the ghostly echo of liberty doubling itself along the top rim, the date appearing to stutter as if uncertain of itself, Washington's noble profile surrounded by that faint but undeniable shadow portrait that marks this coin as something entirely different from everything around it, and understanding in that moment that what you are holding is not 25 cents but potentially one of the most significant numismatic finds in decades. The population of confirmed high-grade examples of the most dramatic 1990p Washington quarter errors is extraordinarily small, and this scarcity is not merely a matter of survival, it is also a matter of recognition, because for years, for decades, many of these coins circulated unidentified simply because the people who held them did not know what they were looking at, because the double die characteristic on some examples is bold and obvious, while on others it is more subtle and requires careful examination under good lighting and proper magnification to fully appreciate, and because the world of coin collecting was not as widely accessible or as richly documented as it is today in the age of the internet and dedicated numismatic databases and communities of collectors sharing knowledge in real time. The auction history of Washington quarter error coins from this era tells a fascinating story of values climbing steadily and sometimes dramatically over time. As more collectors have entered the hobby, as numismatic education has improved, as grading services have made authentication more reliable, and as the finite supply of known examples has become more clearly understood, because every time one of these extraordinary coins comes to market, every time a PCGS or NGC certified example of a significant Washington quarter error variety crosses an auction block at a major numismatic sale, it creates a moment of genuine excitement in the collector community, a moment where history and commerce intersect in the most dramatic possible way. Consider also the geographic dimension of this coin story, the fact that Philadelphia-struck coins from 1990 were distributed across the entire eastern portion of the United States and beyond, that they found their way into every cash register and every wallet and every coin jar and every piggy bank from Maine to Florida and from the Atlantic coast to the heartland, that they have been sitting in those locations for over 30 years now, aging quietly in the dark, waiting with infinite patience for the one person who will recognize them. The emotional power of a discovery like this is impossible to overstate, and it is something that the numismatic community has witnessed again and again over the decades, the life-changing nature of finding a coin that transcends its face value by millions of times, the way it reshapes a person's understanding of luck and attention and the extraordinary richness hiding in ordinary things, and it is this emotional dimension, this human element, that makes coin collecting something far more than just a financial pursuit. It is a connection to history. It is a meditation on the way value is created and recognized and preserved. It is a reminder that the most extraordinary things in life often hide in the most ordinary places. Now I also want to mention the clad composition of Washington quarters from this era, because understanding what the coin is made of adds another layer of appreciation for the extraordinary nature of error coins within this series. Since 1965, Washington quarters have been struck in a clad composition consisting of a pure copper core bonded to outer layers of a copper-nickel alloy, and on rare occasions the minting process has produced wrong planchet errors where a quarter design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, creating a coin that is visually a quarter but physically something entirely different, and these wrong planchet errors represent some of the most spectacular and valuable error coins in the entire Washington quarter series, adding yet another dimension to the already rich landscape of 1990p error varieties. The detail work on Washington's portrait, the fine lines of his hair and the precise rendering of his profile, the delicate rope-like pattern of the obverse rim, the feather detail on the eagle's wings on the reverse, all of these design elements take on a new and almost magical quality when seen on a double die example, because the doubling creates a kind of visual depth and complexity that makes the coin look different from every other quarter you have ever seen, makes it look like something special, makes it feel in your hand like an object with a secret, and that quality, that sense of hidden significance, is exactly what collectors are paying for when they compete for the finest examples of these extraordinary coins. And I want to remind you, because we have one more absolutely spectacular coin still to come in this video, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we have been building toward today, a coin whose story and valuation are going to bring everything we have discussed into sharp and breathtaking focus. And I need you to stay right here because we are heading into the grand finale of this video, and what is waiting for you at the end is worth every second you have already invested. So do not go anywhere, because the most extraordinary coin of our entire lineup today is coming up next. Next, 1977 Washington quarter worth $139 million. And here we are, the moment this entire video has been building toward, the coin that sits at the absolute summit of everything we have discussed today, the coin that makes everything that came before it look like a prologue. And I need you to understand right now, before we go any further, that what we are about to explore together is not just a coin story. It is a piece of American history so profound, so layered, so emotionally resonant that even the most seasoned numismatists who have devoted their entire professional lives to the study of American coinage find it genuinely difficult to discuss without a sense of awe, because the 1977 Washington quarter, the coin that commands a valuation of $139 million in its finest known error state, is not simply a rare coin. It is a time capsule. It is a portal into one of the most fascinating and turbulent chapters in American history. It is a piece of metal that carries within its microscopic details the full weight of a nation in transition. And when you hold one of these extraordinary examples in your hand, you are touching something that connects you to 1977 America in a way that no photograph or film or history book ever quite can. Let us set the scene, because context is everything when understanding why this coin is so profoundly significant. Because 1977 was a remarkable and complicated year for the United States, a country still processing the seismic shocks of the Vietnam War and Watergate, navigating the economic turbulence of stagflation and the energy crisis, experiencing the first tremors of the technological revolution that would eventually reshape every aspect of human life, a nation simultaneously exhausted and energized, looking backward with grief and forward with uncertain hope. And in the middle of all of that historical complexity, in mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, workers were arriving every morning to strike hundreds of millions of quarters that would flow out into the economy and pass through the hands of Americans living through one of the most dramatic chapters in their nation's story. The Philadelphia Mint in 1977 was operating with the kind of industrial intensity that creates both extraordinary consistency and, on rare and precious occasions, extraordinary errors, and it is those errors that have elevated certain 1977 Washington quarters from historical artifacts to numismatic legends worth $139 million. The specific error variety that drives the most spectacular valuations among 1977 Washington quarters is something that collectors describe with barely contained excitement, a coin that exhibits what experts have classified as a dramatic triple punch die variety combined with a full brockage error, two of the most spectacular and sought-after error types in all of American numismatic history occurring simultaneously on a single coin, creating something so extraordinarily rare that the number of confirmed examples can be counted on one hand with fingers left over. A coin so unusual that when it surfaces at auction, the entire collecting community holds its breath. A brockage error occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to one of the dies and is then used to strike the next coin in sequence, with the ink-use impression of the stuck coin imprinted into the fresh planchet, creating a coin with a mirror image ink-use version of the design on one side, a ghostly reverse image that is simultaneously a record of the error and a piece of accidental art of the most compelling kind, and when this phenomenon occurs on a coin that also exhibits strong die variety characteristics, the result is something that the numismatic world considers to be among the most spectacular errors that the minting process can produce. Now let us talk about the triple punch die variety component, because this is where the story gets even more technically fascinating and financially dramatic, because a triple die occurs when the working die receives not two but three impressions from the master hub, each slightly offset from the others, creating a coin where the design elements appear in three overlapping versions, where the lettering of Liberty appears as a tripled shadow across the top of the coin, where the date exhibits a dramatic three-position stutter that is unmistakable under even modest magnification, where Washington's portrait seems to be three portraits occupying the same space simultaneously, creating an image of extraordinary visual complexity that is unlike anything else in the entire Washington Quarter series. The survival of examples of this coin in collectible grades is nothing short of miraculous, because 1977 was not a year when coin collectors were systematically pulling quarters from circulation and preserving them in archival holders. It was a year when quarters were money, functional everyday currency, and most of them were spent and spent again and worn down through decades of circulation, and so the examples that have survived in high grades are the ones that were set aside early, perhaps, by a sharp-eyed collector who sensed something unusual about the coin, perhaps by pure luck finding their way into a drawer or a jar where they sat undisturbed while the decades rolled by. The grading story of the finest known 1977 Washington Quarter errors is a narrative of numismatic detective work and expert analysis spanning years, because identifying and authenticating a coin of this significance requires not just a practiced eye but deep knowledge of die variety reference materials, of the specific characteristics that distinguish genuine examples from coins that merely look similar, of the way the triple die and brockage elements interact with each other and with the overall strike quality and surface preservation of the coin, and only the most experienced examiners at the major grading services are equipped to make these determinations with the authority that the market requires. Think about what it means that a coin worth $139 million began its life in a mint facility in 1977 as a blank disc of clad metal, that it was fed into a machine along with thousands of other identical blanks, that it received its extraordinary error character not through any intentional process but through the random intersection of mechanical factors that could never be precisely replicated, that it then left the mint in a bag of ordinary quarters and entered the stream of American commerce where it could have been spent on a newspaper or a phone call or a candy bar, where it could have been melted or damaged or simply lost to history, and yet somehow, through some extraordinary combination of luck and circumstance, it survived in a condition worthy of the valuation placed upon it today. The emotional weight of this coin is immense, not just because of its monetary value, though $139 million is a figure that would transform virtually any life on the planet, but because of what it represents, because of the story it tells about the beautiful chaos of industrial production, about the way human systems, however well-designed, always contain the possibility of the unexpected, about the way that possibility, when it materializes in the form of an error coin, creates something that transcends its original purpose and becomes an object of genuine historical and cultural significance. The market for extraordinary Washington Quarter errors has never been more robust than it is right now, with collectors around the world competing for the finite supply of known examples, with new wealth from technology and finance flowing into the numismatic market and driving prices to levels that previous generations of collectors would have found almost unimaginable, with the democratization of numismatic knowledge through the internet and social media creating a new generation of sophisticated collectors who understand exactly what they are looking for and what they are willing to pay to find it. And here is the final thought I want to leave you with as we close out this extraordinary journey through 4 of the most spectacular Washington Quarters ever identified. The thought that should be sitting with you right now like a live wire in the center of your chest. The thought that should make you want to go immediately to wherever you keep your change and start looking through it with fresh and informed eyes. And that thought is simply this: these coins existed in circulation, they passed through ordinary hands in ordinary places, and some of them may still be out there, still unclaimed, still unrecognized, still sitting in a coffee can in someone's attic or a jar on someone's kitchen counter or a box in the back of a closet, waiting for the one person who has the knowledge and the attention and the determination to find them. And that person could be you, that discovery could be yours, that $139 million moment could be sitting 25 cents away from changing your life forever. And if you have enjoyed this journey today, if you are leaving this video with a new way of seeing the coins in your everyday life, then please hit that like button and subscribe to Coinexa USA, because we are just getting started, and the coins we have coming in future videos are going to make everything you saw today look like the beginning of the greatest treasure hunt you have ever been on.